Sweet. Recording we are. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sunny, and I am the host of Taboo Talk, the safe space for exploring the edge of the status quo. Today's topic is sexuality. We're going to focus pretty heavily on labels when it comes to sexuality. I have a couple of guests today. We have another that hopefully is on the way, Heather. She comes along. We're just going to include her. In the meantime, I'm going to let these lovely people introduce themselves a little bit. Aaron, you want to tell us who you are and why you're here?
My name is Aaron. I'm here just because I'm a pretty sexual person, pretty open, and Sarah enjoys my opinions about things. And that's it.
Awesome.
Who are you?
I'm Beth Ostrander.
Hi, Beth.
Hi. And I love to talk about sex. I find it, I'm curious about everyone's story. And I have my own story coming from a really, from a religious background. So it was a repressed kind of upbringing. And I took that on. And then my whole life, I shut down my desires. And from there, on my journey of actually uncovering my sexual desires, I uncovered all of my desires and have started to actually open up and enjoy the world and myself. And so I created a community called Gourmet Sex Life. And I now work with others to help them find out what is it they really want in their sex lives, but in all areas of their lives as well. And just start finding out what has been blocking them. So often we have, all of these taboos that have us shut down our desires. And so I help work with people to acknowledge them and just be cool with it. And then
you've actually made talking about sex like your job.
That's my job. Yes, I do coaching around sex. It's awesome.
Hey, so you're the perfect. This is why you're a guest on this week's Taboo Talk, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then just to give some context for why I care. I mean, I care about all subjects that are taboo. Like I just really enjoy stirring the pot and giving people access to a conversation they maybe wouldn't normally have. But then just to kind of lay some of the groundwork, I am pretty sexually fluid. I'm pretty open about my sexuality, and I will talk about just about anything. And I have friends in very wide, diverse, different communities in the sexual arena. And with that said, I have like a few things that I want to touch on and a couple of things that I want to talk about. But for the most part, we're just going to talk. Like there's not an agenda. We got nowhere to get. This isn't a debate. The point is just to talk openly about sexuality and labels. And anybody in the chat that wants to join in, feel free. If you put a /Q before your comment, it'll show up on the left as a question to make sure we see it so that we can interact with you. Otherwise, it gets a little hard for us to keep up with the chat. So one of the first things that I want to start off with is just like, okay, what is sexuality? Like Webster's dictionary defines it as like a sexual being, I think is kind of the gist of it. Sexuality is seriously, in and of itself, diverse. Yeah. So like when we talk about sexuality, what is that for? I mean, I have my own answer, but I'd love to hear from you guys. So when I said to you guys, come talk with me about sexuality, we're going to talk about the taboo angles on sex. Like, what is sexuality to you?
For me, it's actually everything. When I created Gourmet Sex Life, it's actually a gourmet life I'm talking about, because I believe our sexuality is connected to our body image. It's connected to our level of confidence. It's connected to how we see ourselves, whether our feminine side, our masculine side. It's how we exist in everyday life. So sexuality is a massive conversation. So that's why I can talk about it all the time.
So for you, it's just every element who you are. What about for you?
Yeah. Man, for me, it's been in phases, man. I've had some time where it was repressed a little bit. And then when it did blossom and I did accept my sexuality, it was like a freight train, you know? It wasn't necessarily always needing to.
What do you mean accept your sexuality?
Just more like accept being sexual. Because like when you're younger, you know, you're taught that sex is bad, you know, and then you have to come to terms with, you know, what you're taught as sex being bad, and then realizing that so much of the world is driven by it, you know. So then you have to develop it on your own terms.
That's one hell of, like that right there is like a whole thing to be unpacked. So
right.
That's a really good point. So when we're kids, we're taught that sex is a bad thing. Why? Like, what was the context under which you first thought sex was bad?
Man, similar to you, where my parents or my mother was moderately religious, probably not as religious as your parents. And I remember being sexual in kindergarten. Yeah. I actually got caught playing show me
your bits,
show you mine, and got reprimanded, and that was probably a big aspect for me. So right
then and there, it was like your sexuality was wrong.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I had a similar very early on experience. My mom caught me masturbating, and poor woman, I think she probably almost had a heart attack or thought she was going to hell, something, but she didn't know what to do with it, and of course shut that down. So it's interesting that you also had an early experience.
Right.
Yeah. I remember, my mom probably doesn't remember this, but I remember like it was with another girl. It was show me yours, I'll show you mine. And it was totally like in our minds, it wasn't even sexual.
Right.
It was just like, hey, the body part that we're not supposed to look at, does it look the same? Like,
or
what's going on?
About, or touch.
We were
or
really
anything.
young. And her mom, the girl's mom, caught us and like grabbed me by my hair and like took me home. Like I wasn't allowed to play with her anymore. And we were so innocent
for us, like, because before that there was no oh my gosh, I'm just remembering actually, Sunny.
Right.
I'm remembering one time going into the bathroom with my boyfriend, like not a boyfriend, a friend who was a boy. We were like 6, he was 5, whatever. And we were talking and playing, and I followed him to the washroom. And I remember his mom yelling at me. And I went away and hid in a closet somewhere and cried because I didn't know that there was anything wrong. And she all of a sudden made it this thing, which it wasn't a thing before.
Yeah. It's funny how the adults make it the thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's like it could be something so much, I don't want to say cleaner, but it could, it's so innocent.
Yeah.
You treat, like, as children, we're trying to figure some shit out. And for us, it's innocent.
Yeah.
But then the other side of that is the adult who has all of the dirty connotations of sex and sexuality. Yeah. And they're almost like projecting it onto you as a kid, like you're going to be a whore or you're going to be,
right.
Whatever. Yeah. But it's like, no, I'm 5. What the fuck?
Well, and it's interesting how a lot of these taboo talks come back to parenting, and like how we have the honor of modeling for the next generation what is okay. And it's like, it's interesting because I don't have kids. I'm a fabulous aunt, I think, and I'm a great mentor and stuff. But like when I interact with kids, there's been multiple times where the parent of the child has been surprised at what I said or did with the child, just because I treat them like they have valid opinions, right? So it's just interesting. Yeah. Noah's got a question. He's like, why is it that sexuality has been so repressed over the years? And we're going to do a whole separate taboo talk on sex and God.
Good.
Because
okay.
I would say,
because my immediate reaction to that is religion and possession, and the moving around of resources, and man,
it's big.
Yeah, it's huge.
Sex is like, it's interesting too, because sex can be, I know I'll be honest, at one point in my life, this was true for me, but I know for a lot of women, sex can almost become a currency too.
Right.
Like it's where some of our feminine power resides.
Here's a thing that I think about too when it comes to that. Where was the question? Why has it been so repressed?
Yeah. Is it a control thing?
I like that.
I think that and I think that's like the straightaway perspective that one might have to a question like that. I tend to, like, a lot of my thought processes in this context and other contexts tends to go back just like scientifically. It's like, all right, so think about 3,000 years ago, whatever, the dawn of different religions, 5,000 years ago.
Have you read The Dawn of Sex?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
but
okay.
I'll go probably because of, that's a good, I listen to the author's podcast all the time. Anyway, I digress. Crabs and bumps on your privates. Like, there were no condoms when we were cavemen. And I'm sure not all of us were very clean because there were also no razors. So you didn't have clean pussies and clean balls, and you didn't have condoms. So if you had sex with a few people, you know, maybe you caught some shit. And maybe that might even be, and this is just like whatever. I haven't read enough books to say this with any validity, but it's just some opinion that I have. It's like maybe some of the evils of sex in the context of religion and stuff might have roots in
the diseases.
If you have sex with 20 people, you probably have crabs, you probably have, and then like, well, then if you have these diseases because of sex, then God must think that sex is bad, so don't have sex.
It's an interesting.
You know what I'm saying? When really it's just like when you're full of hair and walk around in the mud and waiting to find a river to bathe in, you're probably going to be a little bit more dirty, which is you're more susceptible to some things.
Right.
And then, you know, maybe the root of sexual repression is really like in the simplest, like a very, very simple, like when you're dirty, your privates get dirty. When really like it's just that simple. It doesn't have anything to do with religion or money or ownership. And all those things came after the fact. Because then men are like, well, I only want to sleep with women that have bathed. But the only women that bathe might have to be rich women at the time. Yeah. Meaning like, you know, your dad had built a little hut next to a lake. You know what I'm saying? And that was rich then.
It's an interesting concept. Like, I mean, a lot of times it's easy to blame religion.
Right.
And you've got an interesting point. Maybe it started before that.
Power, or what is it called? Male privilege. It's easy to blame like all these things when really like at the root it could just be simple. Like one person caught a real bad bug and died and wrote it down, and then like now it's this whole big thing. You know? I don't know.
It's interesting because it's the same. I mean, if you take why different foods were not allowed, I think it's similar reasons. It was trying to make sense of and how to have us humans survive and exist. And in that context, God, the ultimate, was, you know, the person who was ruling all of this. So now, though, actually, I'd love to take the same question that Noah asked and sex is best when it's one-on-one. George Michael, Jeff Adams. Sorry, got distracted. Wow, this is so much fun.
I would disagree. I don't know that sex is always best when it's one-on-one, but good for George Michael.
That's such another topic.
Why has sexuality been repressed over the years was the original question. And then is it a control?
Got it. And I actually, that's an interesting, very philosophical question. But if we actually think in our own lives and take it to our own families and our own existence, we can take it down a little bit more where, say, our families had these belief systems, and out of their love and trying to take care of us, kind of a similar thinking, like religion was trying to take care of us, keep us healthy. I don't think we were repressed out of repression's sake at all. It just happened that way in an intention to love and care for us. And in my case, I was raised in a household where I was encouraged to wait till marriage to kiss. Yeah. Oh. Like that was the I was actually sent to seminars based on that methodology, that mentality. Mm-hmm. And like now my mom would, I mean, mom and dad might be watching. So guys, you might have to put earmuffs on at some point. Cause I'm going to be pretty. Yeah. My mom totally just joined. My mom welcome. This is great.
That's hilarious. Mom, I was just talking about how you might have to put earmuffs on for this one. So watch at your own risk. I'm just saying. I was raised in a household where, you know, waiting until kissing for marriage was encouraged. And now I'm pretty sure my mom would not encourage that. You know, she would not actually suggest that I wait until marriage to decide if I'm physically attracted to someone. But the reason she did that was based on her belief system. She was coming from a good place. She was trying to raise me the best that she knew how with the tools that she had, which in her case meant that, you know, I shouldn't have sex until marriage, and that being overly sexual was going to, I remember my dad having a specific conversation with me about not being too sexual and not wearing too short of shorts because it would make men think the wrong thing. And the way I could have control in the situation was to not encourage men to think of me as a sexual object. That's what my adult 30-something-year-old brain hears. My teenage heard, don't dress a certain way because it might make men do things. And I was like, wait, I can make men do things? What? Right?
You know what? Actually, it's so great. I'm a parent. I've got 2 daughters. One is 9, one is 5. They both like boys now, which is crazy. And I'm looking at it from the other side, and I'm very open. But it's still scary. It's still scary because how do I allow? It's the same in all areas of parenting. How do you allow your children to have freedom, but also help them to understand how to exist in society, which doesn't always allow for freedom? So I've actually had similar conversations. My daughter wants to wear makeup, my 9-year-old. She wants to wear makeup and dress. She wants to look like someone older than herself. That's what we always wanted. And I mean, fundamentally, I don't really care. She can wear what she wants. Her hair can be whatever color. I'm not worried, but I am concerned at how that will affect how people treat her. And
well, like how do you as a parent and as a kid in today's society, how do you not interact with the taboos, not continue to perpetuate this bullshit like sex is bad conversation?
Yes.
While you're in a world where sex is a tool and sex is currency and there is a lot of things about sex and sexuality that could legitimately get your daughters into trouble.
Right.
So it's even as an adult, much less as you've got a teenage daughter. How do you handle that?
I was going to say that the answer to that, I think, is easy. It's the application of the answer that is hard. To me, the answer is simple. You fucking raise empowered young women. Like, that's super.
He says it like that's easy.
No. But remember the statement I just said? Like, the answer is easy.
Right. Of course. Yes, I see.
How do you do that is fucking hard. But my daughter's 13. It's funny because about a week ago, I woke up, and I was about to get in the shower, and I remember being like, damn, I think I need to buy my daughter a vibrator. What? And like, I texted her mom. I said, listen, I'm like, come on.
That's amazing that you're
mom.
Mom, your mom or her mom?
No, Neve's mom, my daughter's mom.
Okay.
Baby mama. Baby mama.
Did you just spell it that way?
I just had, no, I still call her by her name, but maybe I shouldn't do that here. I don't know.
Well, I just want to make sure you're not texting your own mother. No. You're texting the baby mom.
Christmas gift idea, mom.
I'm like, baby mom, I just had this thought, and I don't know where I stand on this, but this is me texting. Right? I haven't fully decided where I stand, but here's a thought. She's 13, and sex is probably right around the corner, etc., etc. Sex toy. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Emoji with the open mouth and the googly eyes. And then I think about it for a few seconds, knowing she's at work, so I know she can't respond to it right away. So I'm trying to open a conversation and then respond to my own self in front of her so she can read it all. And I'm like, I think in this day and age, 2016, where
frozen in time. So I'm just looking at the comments on the side, and I'm not sure if you guys can hear me and not Sunny and Aaron, or what's up. I'll just keep talking. Someone didn't like his convo. Click, hang up. I'm interested. Someone said here on the side, here's my advice for my kids. No addictions, no felonies, and no pregnancies before college degree, just at a minimum. That's cool. I love it. It's the conversation of how do we do that? How do we make sure that we allow our kids to explore and discover and not feel the judgment, and at the same time remain safe and not pregnant, and before they can manage all of that, and they're not taken advantage of, like Sunny was saying, that they're not love and respect, clear, open conversation, and boundaries. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example of how I talk to my older daughter. I actually talk to her quite openly. Hi guys, I don't know, you can hear her?
Something happened.
Okay. Yeah. So I've carried on kind of reading some of the comments that people are talking about in just, okay. what they're thinking around their kids. And some people are giving some ideas of how, like, love and respect, clear, open conversation and boundaries, and sometimes a lot of understanding. Absolutely. I was just about to say, with my oldest daughter, so around her, I actually talked to her about, basically she asked me a question, I'm going to answer her as straight as I can. And then I tell her that you need to be aware that a lot of other kids in your class and a lot of their parents will be very, very uncomfortable if you start talking about this.
Right.
So I help her understand that, yeah, we can talk about it. There's absolutely nothing wrong here. And in fact, the more information, the better. So she knows, just like swear words. I'll tell them the swear words so they don't actually say them, or they understand when they're being said. Like, I'd rather them know the information and then make choices about it, but understanding the context that they're in. So that's one way.
Well,
yeah.
To answer someone who's making a comment on the side is like, her mother and I haven't decided to do anything as far as buying a vibrator. It was just a thought in my head. Because at 13, I was already acting up. But hold on real quick. Yeah. So it was a fleeting thought. And I allowed the fleeting thought to open a conversation that her mother and I can have. This wasn't like, so let's get a vibrator for our daughter. I was like, there might, when's the right time for that? So I hit Reddit up and I hit Google up. I'm trying to figure out, like, where other people doing it. Not that I live my life, but how other people are doing anything. But I do need perspective outside of my own thoughts, because I'm fucking dumb sometimes. So I ask her mom, but her mom doesn't know all the answers either. So it's like, here's an idea. It's going to come up soon anyway, because she's 13. So we have 14, 15. By 15, most people are having sex. So sometime in the next 2 years, we need to. So what's the first thing I do is not buy a vibrator for my 13-year-old daughter, but I go buy Ourselves, Our Bodies.
So you got her a book.
I went immediately to Amazon and was like, let me buy this book. And so I called around trying to find it locally, couldn't find it. Bought it on Amazon, had it sent to her house in her name. So the book will go to my daughter when it shows up. A couple of days later, the book shows up and her mom hits me up. The book's here. And I told her, Mom, let this book be a segue so that you guys can have the conversation. That's awesome. Go out, have dinner. Fucking make it a mom-daughter date thing. Send me the bill. You have a book that has fucking everything in it. If you're not familiar with the book, Our Body, Ourselves, it was written in the 70s. And it's been revised a few times. It's been revised a few times. The latest one is, I think, 2011. And it's basically a woman's body encyclopedia. So it has everything from, like, your period to puberty to STDs to condoms to what different vaginas look like, all that shit. So basically, like, everything a 13-year-old might have a question for, but maybe they don't want to ask. I want to ask my dad if my pussy looks right. Like, why would you want to do that? You almost don't even want to ask your mom that shit. You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't have asked my mom that.
So then if you have a book and you can be like, well, let me find out. Because then they could refine their question that isn't so embarrassing. So you're empowering
your daughter to embrace her sexuality, even though she's only 13. Right. So to go back to the beginning, had a fleeting thought, like, should I buy my daughter a vibrator? Shit, she's 13. But what I love is that you talk to your baby mom about it, even though you guys aren't together. You guys have open dialogue. And then you chose to empower your daughter to step into her sexuality. Well, not yet. No, I'm leaving that whole part up. Well, by giving her the book, you did empower her.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Right. So you bought her the book.
Step one, just like step one. Education.
Personally, just FYI, in case, like, just FYI for everybody who knows me, don't ever buy me a sex toy. I will buy my own.
Right.
Right. Me too.
That's the conclusion that I came
as a thank you for this.
Where like, here's the thing though, is like, young people on Reddit are like, I would never want my mom to ever But people our age also posting on Reddit.
We're young.
Okay. People in our age pocket. Parents are like, man, I'm glad my mom did the embarrassing thing at the time to buy this or that for me, including the book, you know? So it's like, I don't know what's right, what her response to that's going to be. Right. So I'm just like, well, here's a book.
You're empowering her to go explore.
Now, I think that's awesome. And I, as the father, I just kind of have to wash my hands of this situation and hope that mom deals with it, right? Because I don't want to embarrass her.
No,
Say again?
I'm going to actually suggest something even further, and you don't need to wash your hands of it. In fact, with my my ex, he actually we both had a conversation together. We talk about this, you know, each week. If there's something that weird that comes up, I talk to him about it, right? Or vice versa. And so when the sex stuff started coming up, we started talking about it, and he had his own conversation with our 9-year-old, and it was a little bit weird, but mostly not. And he kind of talked to her around comparing it to, I don't know, he did a great job, actually. Even talked about STDs, but in a kid version, mostly asking her what she knew and then telling her a little bit more. And yes, that was uncomfortable, but when I spoke to her afterwards, she had a lot of ease around it. Like, she was so, I don't think you need to wash your hands of that at all.
There's something powerful that comes from the male figure in your life being willing to talk about that, because you're modeling for her what is and isn't okay. I just want to pause really quick.
Amazing story, yes, because Heather.
Yeah, welcome Heather to the conversation.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm so sorry. My calendar did
Don't worry
not.
about it. You're here. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah.
I just want to catch you up on the housekeeping stuff. So, not a debate. So it's awesome if we disagree. That's totally cool. If anybody in the chat gets rude or crude, we're ignoring them.
Cool.
And a safe space for exploring sexuality and labels. This is my buddy Aaron. He lives locally.
Hi, Aaron.
He's a very sexual person, and he's a guy. I thought it'd be good to have some testosterone.
Yeah.
Estrogen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Beth.
And
Hi, how are you?
Beth is a sex conversationalist. And Heather, if you want to give us like the 30-second intro to who you are, and we'll dive right back into the conversation.
I'll take like 10 seconds. Hi, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have been an event and wedding planner for 20 years, and I'm also a transformational business coach. So I also am a lesbian, and I have 4 daughters. And boy, there's a lot of talk about around all this stuff all the time in my house.
So you have 4 daughters and a wife.
I do not have a wife. I think she might be listening. I do not. I have a partner, but I do not have a wife.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't jump the gun for you guys. Sorry, Bernadette.
We'll let you know. Don't worry.
Awesome.
And I'm sitting on a bed in a hotel room in Santa Barbara. So there you go.
Woohoo.
I know, right?
All right.
It's not bad.
Hold on. I want to touch. Some of these people are like, you know, by 13 you're already horny. And like, yeah, you guys are totally right. I know I was, and I'm sure people around me were, but I remember my 13-year-old self.
No, my kids are not thinking about sex.
A lot about that shit. But I didn't really know what I was talking about. The context of sex was almost like a playful thing, and something that I knew I wanted to do, but hadn't figured out, like, what are all the terms, and you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the questions that I had were not even answerable without experience.
Right.
You know?
I think Sunny said something about you, and Beth did too, getting involved with your daughter in this whole process. And I do think that is powerful. But what you're modeling is the kind of partner, should she choose a male partner, that she should be looking for. Somebody that's going to have open, honest discussion. It's nothing gross. It's nothing embarrassing. If you aren't comfortable talking about all of your body parts and everything that's happening with your partner, you really have no business having sex with them.
Well, and here's the thing too, like, his daughter is very mature. She's a pretty self-aware kid, and he knows that. Like, he's an involved dad. Right. So like, like, my dad wasn't super involved in my life when I was a teenager. He was the primary income earner, and he wasn't super involved. When my dad did talk to me about sex, it was uncomfortable. I'm grateful he did. But if my dad had sat down and said anything like what Aaron says to his daughter, it would have been inappropriate, because he didn't have that level of relationship with me. Aaron has a really tight relationship with his daughter.
But right? I think it's great. I think she's lucky. Yeah.
I agree. He's awesome. I want to shift the conversation a little bit, because I don't want to go too far down the path of kids and whatnot, because that's like a whole monster.
Its own taboo
subtopic.
It is. Yeah. So we talked, and we're going to do a whole nother taboo talk on sex and God. We're going to get into religion and sex and how those two relate as well. I want to focus a little bit more, if we can, on labels and exploring sexuality. So we started off by like, what is sexuality to us? And we kind of talked about that. Heather, you weren't here for that bit. So I want to give you a chance. When I said, come talk about sexuality on Blab, what is sexuality to you?
That's such a big question, Sunny. So I think there are multi layers. Sexuality can just be a feeling. feeling. It can be a thing, an energy you put out there. I think I'm a very physically sexy person. Like, I like to give off that energy.
You are?
Yeah, girl. No, but I think it's that. I think it's an energy, and I think it is, maybe it's who you're attracted to, and maybe it's what's happening. But I feel like sexuality is like this huge umbrella term, and it's more about a feeling and less about an action, personally.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to sexuality, I was trying to make I'm on Instagram as well. And so I was trying to make like a image for Instagram to advertise tonight's talk. And I went and kind of Googled terms to see like what I wanted to put a whole bunch of sexuality based terms on an image to say, we're going to be talking about all this stuff. And so I went and I found and I'll put it in the resources. If you guys go to tabootalk.us and sign up, I'll send an email out with all the things we talk about tonight so you guys can see the books and all that stuff. But I found this website that has a dictionary list of terms that are related to sexuality. And it was interesting how a lot of them were actually related to gender identity. And then a lot of them were related more to me around self-identity than sexuality.
Right.
But when you got to the sexuality part, it was like homosexual, heterosexual, pansexual, bisexual, sapiosexual, asexual, demisexual. Like there's like so many different sexuals. And it blew my mind.
But the thing about those labels is those labels aren't for you yourself.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
Those labels are for other people.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I could say like I'm straight, cis, whatever, but like I'm just happy. Like I'm just trying to be happy. You know what I'm saying? And sex plays a role in that, But I choose not to be so stuck on all these labels because those labels are not for me. If I spend all my time trying to figure out which of these labels that the internet has created to help me figure me out, I'm not just figuring me out. You know what I'm saying? I want to do that on my own terms and by my own cognizance. Yeah. Sometimes I think like all these extra pronouns and stuff is kind of silly because it's like, just be happy and accept yourself and love yourself and all those other fun cliche things that we all say in this time. And just and be okay with that. Figure out the label later. Fuck the label. Like if you're focused on being happy first,
I don't disagree. And I think like you started off saying that the label's for other people.
Right.
So for me, I identify as pansexual. I don't identify as bisexual because for me, there's something to that. I fall in love with a person, not their bits. Right. And the reason that I have identified that label for myself and that I use it in conversation is so that if I want to have a conversation about relationships and who I choose to love and how I choose to live my life with somebody, they can file me away in their head in a way that they can understand to and relate to. So we can have a conversation. Because if I don't give them a way to relate to me, they're going to be like, wait a minute, you do what?
See, here's my thought on that. It's like, how about spend time with me long enough to know who I am?
But that's not always possible, especially in Sunny's business.
If you're so fleeting in and out of my life that I have to introduce myself as I am this and this and this and this, and it's like, then let's just have regular conversation. Let's go deep. Let's maybe leave some of that stuff out. Because if you're engaged with someone enough, then they're gonna learn those things about you without having
it's not a debate.
Right. I'm not trying to.
But people, I think, who are uncomfortable themselves, who've never actually explored it for themselves, it's something to feel comfortable with.
Right.
And also, it's not, so for example, in my business and in Sunny's business, sometimes we're speaking to crowds where this bit of very vulnerable personal information is valid or helpful. And so we put it out there as a way to bring people in and engage.
Right.
And they're not close people. They're not people that we're going to sit down and have a 3-hour chat with and really let them know who we are deep down inside. So that it's sometimes helpful. I think it's relevant. What do you guys think of same concept, the regaining, especially for the LGBT community, of the word queer? Same concept as what you're using as pansexual, I think. They just don't want to go in a box. They just want to be a little different.
Everyone I know that identifies as queer, it's related to gender these days. That they're gender queer and they don't want to identify and they don't want to be binary.
That's not been my experience.
What's your experience?
My experience is that queer can fall so far across the board. It can be gender for sure. It can just be attraction. I know people women who only sleep with women that still identify as queer. women who
So
sleep with
like
only men that identify as queer. They just kind of don't want a box, and they don't. I think they just don't want to be in the norm. They want to be outside of the norm, but they don't want to identify as anything.
So
it's like
going
for people who don't want to identify with a label.
That's
Heather, can you help me understand just a little bit what you're saying? So you're saying instead of someone saying they're gay, they'd rather say they're queer because gay is too specific, or what are you saying you want to reclaim queer? I'm not sure.
So it's a big trend in particularly with millennials or younger people. They are reclaiming the word queer, partly because it had such a terrible connotation for such a long time. Now let's be very clear. If you are not in the queer community or the LGBT community, don't make the assumption somebody wants to be called queer. Right. But they are just sort of taking it back and making it not negative, and it does not bind them into any sort of specific box. Whereas I am quite comfortably a lesbian. I'm fine with that. I don't need to identify as any other way. I think a lot of the particularly millennials want the fluidity, not just gender fluidity, but sexual fluidity, to make any decision that they want without having someone say, but you said you were blah, blah, blah. You know?
Don't box me in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this. Okay. So I've actually been having conversations with people recently who are in relationship, a committed relationship. And so, Sunny, I know you talked about pan. I think some people who are people coming in for me, they may not know what pan is. You've mentioned it. Some people I can see in the comments, they know what that is. Yeah. That was new for me at one point. So maybe you can talk a bit about that, because I would love to talk about when you're in a committed relationship or you have a version of a relationship, how sometimes we have boxed in around that, not necessarily the gender issue, but just how it looks.
I think you might be collapsing a couple of terms. So I identify as pan-poly. So I am pansexual, and for me, like in every word, like you can find different definitions, right? So for me, I identify as pansexual. I fall in love with the person, not their bits. Okay. So it doesn't matter to me if you're a man, a woman, trans. It doesn't, like, how you physically represent doesn't matter to me. I fall in love with the person. Right. Which is why I don't identify as bisexual. To me, that implies a binary view on sexuality. Huh. You can Google this. There's Urban Dictionary. There's a whole bunch of different places you can find it. And like, that's what Aaron was saying. Like, really, the label is more to let other people relate to you. So and then Paul gets into a whole nother thing around commitment, around having like polyamory, as in having multiple loves. So I've been in a relationship with more than one person at a time before. Mm-hmm. But those are two different things. And what you were saying, Beth, about having people in a committed relationship and looking to
there were two topics. Yeah, I just realized that some people may not even know what you're talking about. And
I think in a lot of cases, pan and queer overlap an awful lot. I just think it's word choice. It's the word choice that the person feels most comfortable using. They're incredibly similar. And if anybody out there has a specific different definition or something that shows the differences, I would love to hear. But in my experience, it's pretty much the same thing, just word choice.
I tend to use queer for pretty much anything that's not like traditional relationship, man, woman, married, nuclear family, etc. So I tend to think of even people that, you know, with hesitation, I say that I'm even queer just because I've been in a committed relationship but had my side open when she had no interest in it being open on her side.
Right.
And when I would explain that to people, they'd be like, "What? That's crazy. What?" And there'd be so much opposition to my relationship that I felt outcasted. Oh, that even feels weird saying. But, you know, like it was a small problem. It's not a problem anymore. So I tend to think of, just like outside of the normal, like someone said, anything outside of cis. And I think that's like a pretty
Heather, will
simple
you
definition.
Define cis? Because we keep using the abbreviation, but you're probably the most in that world to define
it. Is quite simply your very standard traditional heterosexual couple. It's what you identified earlier, Aaron, as just the man, woman, they don't have to be married, but very stereotypically straight.
So cisgender, cissexual is like the absence of anything non-traditional or alternative or outside of what society is defined as normal.
That is correct.
So there's a lot of labels. There's a lot of labels.
Have you been on Facebook? Have you seen, if you can go in and self-identify on Facebook? It's like freaking ridiculous.
OkCupid now has, I have a whole bunch of friends on OkCupid and I help them with their profiles, and we were in developing somebody's like 2 weeks ago, and they have like, you can have up to 3 sexual preferences, and they have sapiosexual, which is intellect only, then asexual, no sex. They had like 17 sexual, like, it was crazy. I was really impressed. I thought it was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's nice, especially in that scenario, because you can sort of find people who are as widely minded as you.
Yeah, they also had open and poly curious. I mean, it almost got to the point where it was a little ridiculous, but it was to see.
Can we talk about this whole idea of like taking it from the label and talking about I mean, to me, I think there's so many versions because we're trying to find pleasure and happiness. I mean, Aaron, how did you say it? I'm just trying to enjoy myself. It's that simple. Like, forget the stupid label. Can we talk about that? Because I think there's so many people who don't even try to enjoy themselves. Like they're
more busy trying to find the label that fits them than being themselves.
Maybe they're not even actually. They're feeling dissatisfied, but it's hard to. There's a lot of people out there who are feeling dissatisfied, but if you actually look at why, you've got to deal with it, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to deal with.
Well, yeah, I don't think that there's a lot of space in traditional society. Like, you'd have to go and look for a subculture in your area of people who are comfortable just sitting around and talking about sex and being physically intimate. We're going to do a whole other taboo talk on just platonic touch, because that in and of itself is
totally
weird.
That'd be great.
But yeah, like I will sit around at a table, and I mean, I'm cognizant of young ears and stuff, but for the most part, I'll sit around at a table and talk about different sexual positions and, you know, past experiences and sex toys and whatever. And that's totally comfortable for me in my social circles. But for a lot of people, to your point, Beth, that's not normal. It feels wrong. It feels dirty. So Beth, this is your journey recently. How do you start to dip your toes into exploring being more grounded and comfortable in your own sexuality? Like, how did you kick off that journey for yourself? So maybe I can capture some resources to share with others.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, how did I kick that off? It's been years and years of a journey. So like I was saying, I grew up, for people who've just joined, I grew up in a very, like, my foundation was Christianity, and I bought in, I was all for it. Right. And then I was married for 12 years, and the sex was dissatisfying on both sides. It really wasn't, there were a lot of beliefs that kept us repressed. That was kind of the general theme of it. And frustrated. And I remember many, many times feeling the frustration, but not even looking at why or what I even wanted. The moments I would start thinking about what I wanted, I would feel bad. Like this, Sunny, we've talked about the whole good girl syndrome, right? Where you and men, I talk to men. What's that? Yeah.
She's got to go, the good girl.
Yeah. Well, no. Okay. Actually, I actually love the idea of having a blend. Let's have some good girl, but have some naughty girl. Like let's do it all.
There's the whole good girl syndrome. It's actually, I believe it's actually called that in like medical journals now, where it's Christian girls who get married. They're told that sex is bad because they're not supposed to have sex till marriage. Then you get married, and you're so in the mindset of sex is bad that it takes you sometimes years to loosen up enough to enjoy sex with your husband now that it is ordained by God.
That's it.
And that's the whole sex and God conversation. But yeah, it makes it really hard to explore your sexuality, even if you're not moving into an alternative queer lifestyle. If you're a woman who likes men, who fits all the social norms, how do you get grounded in and start to explore your sexuality when there's all the slut shaming and all of this? Like, that's a whole nother.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So,
I mean, coming out changed how I viewed sex. I was never ashamed or shy, but for myself, my body, and being able to get out and say, I want this, touch me like that, let's try this. Mm-hmm. I was never, ever able to do that until I came out. Ever.
That's interesting.
What age were you at, Heather, when you did that?
38.
Yeah. Oh, that was my first orgasm. The year
I guess that's not true. I came out to my world. I came out to my parents. That was your first orgasm. At least I started that a little bit younger. But no, I came out to my parents at 38. I came out to myself at 36, and I came out to my then husband at 37. And I am now 41. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been with men and women, but a lot of the men I've been with are not comfortable saying what they want and what, you know what I mean? Like it's actually like I've had a lot more experience with women being comfortable in vocalizing what they want. Once you get into the bedroom and you're in an intimate environment, women, in my experience, tend to be a lot more comfortable vocalizing and more grounded in knowing what they want. Whereas men tend to just expect it to happen and be mechanical.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the difference between men and women, but do men ask for what they want?
I do. I'm clear about what I want in conversation.
No,
but men do. I've met a lot of men who are just as suppressed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Really.
Afraid of something, but does that speak more to your partner?
I think the afraid of is just being embarrassed, because maybe you know, when you're having that conversation, that might be, you know, 1 of 10 times that you've ever even talked about sex or things that you want. You know, maybe the only time some people ever talk about the things that they want sexually is like over a glass of wine with their best friend, and never with anyone else.
But what do we think about that? You're right. You're right. How often people talk about, particularly women, but I think maybe men too, they talk about sex with their friends, but they don't often talk about it with their mates or their partners. And not always, certainly not umbrella across the board, but very often, right, Beth? Don't you find this?
Exactly. In fact, and even with our friends, people talk about
person to talk to. Not that you couldn't talk to your friends, but
no, even in conversations with our friends, when we talk about sex in public and in general, or in our groupings, we often don't actually talk about the things we really need to talk about or want to talk about. We still have hidden things. So for sure with our partners, there's a big risk. I mean, the things that are so challenging to talk with our partners are we're not getting what we want, or they're asking for too much, or we're scared. And I mean, those conversations are risky. We have a sense that if we have them, first of all, they might judge us or actually think we're gross or not good enough. And then the other side is that they may actually freak out on us or get mad at us or run away from us, disconnect from us. Like, I mean, think of a lot of men who are wanting more sex. That's a little stereotypical because I know it goes both ways, actually. I know women who are more sexual than their husbands and they're wanting more. And then, so then that scares the partner who's not needing as much right then or not wanting it, or for some reason is shut down, because it actually gets them scared that they can't deliver. And then the fear is, oh my God, my partner's going to go look somewhere else. And if I don't fucking do something about it, I'm screwed. Like it is a risky conversation. And so there are ways to have those conversations, but we don't often know how. And we often come in really loaded and then it's disastrous. And then we don't want to touch that one again.
Well, I think this all goes back to the core of like humanity and relationships and communicating. And like Erin and I were talking, so obviously we were kind of chatting before we started the blab, and we were talking a little bit about how a lot of relationships just come back to being secure in yourself. And kind of like you were saying earlier, Erin, about how you want to be happy and do you. Right. Like I just want to be me, and who cares what label I put on myself. Like you've I think to be able to have that conversation about sexuality and what you want and like really have that happen in a relationship, you've got to start with knowing what you want and knowing who you are. You have to have chosen a partner who is in a similar space.
Right, because that's the avenue that I'm thinking is like, I don't want to be with someone who I can't say, hey, I want blowjobs more often, and then them not be like, I don't ever want to be with somebody who, if I say that, is like, it's such a task. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Or be upset about it in one way or the other. You know, I want to be able to be with somebody who, which is why I'm choosing to not be with anyone at the moment. And I'd much rather be able to speak to someone about what I want, and then it start a conversation.
I think it takes
I also want a woman who is just as adamant about starting the conversation herself. Yeah. You know?
I mean, me too, but I think it takes a really intense level of self-awareness to be comfortable enough and safe enough to do that with somebody, and to know that you've picked a partner that is going to be that way with you, and it isn't going to do what Beth said, that isn't going to freak out or think you're gross or think you're dirty or even be afraid to perform properly, right? Or not be able to give you what you need.
I have to say this too, like just for anybody who happens to be watching that is in that space of like, if I say it, they're going to think I'm dirty. You're not dirty, they're not the right partner for you, and that's okay.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
if you own your body, you get to choose what happens to it. If there's things that are going to make your body feel good and you want to explore in a safe, healthy relationship, and that person doesn't want to explore with you, that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means it's not a good match. Don't like have that mean that you're broken or weird or bad or wrong. Like don't even go there.
I love that, Sunny. Yeah.
I do too.
I just want to give everybody a hug and be like, you're perfect the way you are.
Yeah, exactly. All desires are totally okay. We just need to accept them first so that we can allow see, I think, Sunny, though, the piece there is if we can have a place where we get to decide what we like, because sometimes we don't even know it. We're in our heads so much that sometimes it is in conversation that we discover what we actually like. And then once we've actually embraced that we like the things that we maybe think are shameful because we have our own shit about it, we've got to embrace that. And then we need to allow our partner a little reaction time, because they have all their fucking beliefs that are what they really believe or they don't really believe. Like sometimes it's just reactionary.
Yeah.
So,
But you have to make talking about sex like a regular thing. No, regular. I don't mean like a in frequency, but I also do mean in frequency.
You just mean like normal.
It needs to be normal. I dated a girl for like 3 months who like would tell me, this is so weird. Like you always talk about sex like it's always the right time to talk about sex. I'm like, what?
Oh, exactly. I love that.
It is always the right time to talk about sex.
Thank you.
Like, you know what I was thinking in there? I was thinking about your butthole, and like that should be the reaction. Like, you are, ha ha ha, it's funny.
Yeah.
It should be just like common, you know? It shouldn't be like, there shouldn't be like a time for the so honey son, we need to have a talk about what I want.
We make it such a weird thing. We make it weirder.
You're making it more taboo. You're not making it. You're perpetuating the taboo of sex by making it like a time and place. You know what I'm saying? I've always just been like, yo, when we had sex last night, that shit was crazy. When you did this and that was so awesome. Instead of being like, I really want this and not like, this is okay and this is not okay. Just like in the same that we were talking about earlier about raising young women to be empowered. Like, you should be empowering your partner. So the conversation shouldn't be like the cliche, like I keep saying, like sitting down and having the conversation. Just like you should be empowering your partner should be empowering you. And the way that you do that is by communicating, listening, all of the things that we learn about relationships. We have to do those things with sex too. Like, it's hard. Like, whenever you want to fucking buy a TV, you go on Google and you're like, what's the best TV? You know what I'm saying? But we don't ever do that. Like, how do I communicate better with my wife?
Therapy.
I thought you were gonna say, like, how do we like get a better blowjob? And here, what do you think about this? And like have that discussion. We could literally have that discussion with our partners. Like,
hey, there's a whole
you're checking out the TVs. What do you think about this TV? What do you think about that blowjob? Like,
Bernadette and I did that recently. We were like, have you ever tried that way? Like, no, we should try that way. Yeah. Let's try it that way. Oh, I liked it that way. Yeah.
Love it. And we're all laughing. I think the thing is, like, not only don't make it awkward, but make it fun. Oh my God.
Right. See, because when you're doing it with your girlfriends, you're talking about sex and you're laughing. But when you're doing it with your mate, you're never laughing.
No, but I'm gay. I'm talking about my actual girlfriend, my partner. So not my female friend, but the woman that I actually have sex with. So
yes, your actual partner.
My actual partner.
I want to quickly, there's been a question hanging out for a while, and I just want to let you know the reason we haven't circled back is we touched on that earlier in the talk when we started. The replay will be available if you can go back and watch it. But the question is, like, sex is dirty. And when did that change? When did it become dirty? And we touched on that a lot at the beginning. Basically, we said that some of it's religion, some of it could be diseases. But I would encourage you to go watch the replay. Yeah, we did touch on that whole topic. I just don't want you to think we were ignoring you.
And I think it's getting less dirty, right? Like, it was really dirty for a while, and now it's becoming. There are people who do what you do, Beth. Like, it's becoming less taboo to talk about it. It's becoming more of the norm to have a healthier relationship with your partner and to bring up things you want and to be flexible. I see a shift in people sort of welcoming it back into not being dirty.
Yeah,
I think so.
And having those
why can't you laugh during sex? And I think it's up to the people having sex to make that
We
okay.
laugh during sex all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to give yourself and your partner permission, but I think laughter and fun and smiles during sex is awesome.
Absolutely.
How are whoever asked that question? How are you having sex that you're not laughing?
I know, but I think they thought.
I think she's pointing to the conversation we started about the fact that we're all laughing about it. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
yeah,
great.
and of course we should laugh. Like
and asking, but I think so much of it is flexible, and partners understanding that sometimes you may like this one thing a lot sometimes, and maybe sometimes you're not in the mood for it, and your partner may like something. That doesn't mean they want you to do that every time, or maybe they do. Like, people change and your moods change, and sometimes, yesterday was working, I had 10 minutes to leave before I had to catch my flight, and I was like, can't concentrate on working, have to have sex before I leave right now. And she's like, yeah, let's do that right now. And then it's like 5 minutes later, I was like, I got to go, bye. I love you. So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to try different things, and then, understand if your partner doesn't want that one thing right then. That's okay. It doesn't mean you did it wrong. It doesn't mean they don't want it again.
There's different types of sex. Like we talk about sexuality as like exploring being with different types of people, or maybe even getting into kink and bondage and stuff. But there's also different types of sex in any relationship. Like there's love, there's exploring, like there's all sorts of different things to be explored, regardless of how traditional or non-traditional your relationship is.
Absolutely. I saw something in the comments just now that sex should be fun and not serious. And I'm not sure I agree with that either. I think that sex should often be fun. And sometimes it's serious, and it's incredibly intimate, and it's incredibly personal, and it's almost life altering, the connection that you have. Sometimes it's very serious.
It can be all of those things.
It can be all of those things.
It can be other things.
Sometimes it's all of those things in the course of one session.
Right.
Like,
I've had sex that was confusing. Like, what are we doing?
You
ever been like so contorted where you're like, one time I got a bottle of wine like off the bed at the foot of the bed, and somehow she knocked it over. Like, how'd you get off the bed down halfway on the floor? Like, no, let's get back.
Let's regroup.
Sorry, but is I've had confusing sex, and that's as okay as laughter sex, as is okay with serious sex.
I've been reading a book with one of my partners, called Dear Lover by David Dida. It's the same author that wrote The Way of the Superior Man. He's a very controversial author. He's very blunt and very like straightforward in what he says, and you either agree with him or you don't. And Dear Lover is written from the perspective of a man to a woman as a lover, with like what's going on in a man's head when he's making love to a woman. And it's very serious. Like it gets into like energetic connections and all sorts of stuff. And there's multiple points when I'm reading this where I'm like, men don't think that way. Doesn't really happen. And then I call my buddy who I'm reading it with, and he's like, yeah, we do. And I'm like, wait, what?
Like what? Give me an example.
Like the idea of the deeper a man penetrates into a woman, the more connected he feels to her. And I was like, men are not thinking about that. They're thinking about the fact that it feels good. And he's like, no, sometimes we're thinking about how we're connected and how like we get, like there is the actual, it's just interesting. So yeah, sex can be serious if you allow it to create a connection. Apparently, according to David Dida and Dear Lover, it can be very serious.
I think so.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Sunny, because I think we so often assume things like generally in life, but like the assumption that men are just thinking about the physical feeling is interesting because that would probably be where I go first. But this is the foundation, I think, around sex and around partners, our one partner or new partners, if we're single and we're dating, is this idea of we have no idea of the other person. And actually, if we keep such an open mind or with like a blank slate each time we enter into either just a basic conversation, but in sex, first of all, it's going to be way more fun. We don't know what's coming around the corner. We don't know what they're thinking, whether they're thinking about deep connection or they're thinking of, oh my God, this feels great. And then if we just keep like that blank slate, I'm always at this conversation around if we are in a monogamous relationship, okay, because we're talking about all kinds of relationships. How do we have, if we want to remain committed to one person, How do we stay in that, but have all the amazing sex we want? And not everyone cares to be in a oh my God, with the same person all the time. And so I want to speak about the people that do, because even in that context, it is really, really challenging. So I'd love to hear your opinions around this, but I think if we can keep a blank slate and that person's fresh and new, and we have the laughter, we have all the variations of types of sex, and we have our own life that we actually are engaged with, that we will find adventure in that relationship and want to stay. Or we create something in conversation that we, enter in people or whatever. I'd love to talk about the idea. If you want to stay committed to one, how do you do that?
I think though what you're opening up there, Beth, is Pandora's box on communication and relationships.
Okay.
Like that's a little bit of sexuality, but I think a lot of that comes into communication, relationship, and how you actually connect to that person. Because sexuality,
but it's a lot of sexuality. I'd say sexuality is such a huge part. I've talked to men that I'm dating. I'm like, okay, what percentage of sexuality is important in your relationship? Some have said 90%, some have said 50%, but mostly it's between like 80 and 100. And so I get it. It is common communication and interests in life. But if sex is an indicator of how our connection is, and sex is also something that if we're having good sex and things are rough, things are challenging, whatever, stressful at work, or you're pissed off about something about each other, if you're still having good sex, it'll help carry you through those things.
Absolutely.
I think sex is integral in our whole relationship. And yes, communication, but sex is central.
I couldn't agree more.
And I don't disagree either. And keeping in mind that we're talking about sexuality and sexuality in a relationship, like, I guess I have a hard time, maybe Erin has an opinion, I have a hard time having much to say about what you're asking, Beth, because to me, it comes down to what I said before of like, you have to be confident in who you are, know what you want sexually, and choose a partner that wants the same. If you set that core healthy foundation, then being in a committed monogamous relationship, if that's what you've set the foundation to be, you're going to constantly be in communication and be related to that person. And you're going to constantly look to create adventure and have, because if sex is important to you and you have a solid relationship where communication is good and you've chosen partners that mesh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen naturally.
Totally. And it sounds like that's the luxury of being self-aware before entering into a relationship. I'm speaking of all the, so many people who weren't aware and they're with a partner and they still want to remain with that partner, but they weren't self-aware. They didn't start out in that way. That way is beautiful. That's perfect. That's why I actually want to talk to people before they marry, so they can get that before they enter into something that they want to commit to. And when I say marry, I don't give a shit if you're married or not. I mean, just in a committed relationship. But Sunny, so many people, they wake up, like I woke up, you wake up mid-relationship and the other partner hasn't woken up. So how do you exist in a commitment and create that? I believe you can do it. But I'm not saying it's easy.
It's not going to be easy. And that's why I personally don't think that monogamy, that's why I tend to practice ethical non-monogamy. And I'm not sure that I want to have one partner.
I love that phrase. Can you say that again? Ethical non-monogamy. Love it. Because you're in communication about it. Correct, Sunny? Is that what I'm understanding?
There's a book called The Ethical Slut that you might.
Yes.
Actually a great book. Have you read that one, Beth?
Not all of it. No.
I've looked at it and flipped through pages, but I haven't read it.
It's a good book.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because so many of the people I work with are in relationship. Okay. And they're struggling because they found out they're not satisfied and they don't.
Well, they discovered their sexuality, like you said, mid committed, correct, long-term relationship.
I don't have an answer for that one. That's tough.
And it's not really, I'm not looking for an answer. I want to know what your opinions are and what your experiences have been. But maybe that's because of your way of living, the way you're choosing to live at this point. It's a non-issue, really, for you.
I don't even know if I have a perspective for that conversation. Because I would have figured, how do you get into a relationship that serious without ever having talked about sex?
Oh my God! Please.
It's really easy, Erin. Listen, I've been there.
People do it. Oh my God.
So many. It's such a luxury that you think that it's not common.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
We both have very unique life perspectives over here. Erin and I both met partners and married young and spent our 20s in serious relationships, and so we kind of have similar histories of a unique background. But what do you got to say about it, Heather?
I was actually just about to ask Beth to just circle back for me and succinctly rephrase your question?
My question is this. Are there any things that you've discovered that allow you to have the most amazing loving relationship and have the most ecstatic, adventurous sex life?
Yeah, I mean,
all
it's
together and combined.
all and only and completely all about communication. For me, that is all it is.
Said, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you actually had a different question for us, Beth. You said you wanted to know how to establish that if you're in a relationship and one person becomes more aware of their sexuality.
Okay, fair enough. You're right. That is
communication, and it's uncomfortable communication. As we all know, nearly everything you want in life is just on the other side of being uncomfortable. But it's true.
Props like crazy on that.
Props.
But
I think it's not just communication; it's also gracious communication.
Absolutely, and grateful communication, and nice. Like really being vulnerable, but giving the person you're, especially if the person's not there yet with you, giving them space. And you said this earlier, to sort of digest and understand. Framing things in a way that are going to make them feel safe and not attacked. You know, I mean, I think it's so often in a relationship where one person is in one place and one person is in another, it feels like you're doing something wrong if you're not where I want you to be. And so finding a way to communicate that and not make them feel wrong, but to bring them in because you want them close, because you want this relationship with them.
Yeah, can I get personal though? Because I know those answers, they're easy. It's like, what were you saying, Erin, earlier before? Like the answer to how to parent a young girl, it's an easy answer. And then the actual application of it is really challenging.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I was looking for, not the how is it, because I agree with all that you say. And those are conversations that, you know, I circle around with people. But I'd love if you have an example of being in a committed relationship and working through that. Like, I don't, how long have you been in your partnership for?
It's almost been 2 years. And so, you know, sadly, my example is with my ex. When I came out to him, we both at the time really wanted to stay married. And I mean, you don't get married to get divorced even. And it was a really big process for me to realize that wasn't going to be enough of a partnership. It wasn't enough of a matchup. I wasn't there emotionally and physically, even though I loved him. And we had this beautiful family together. But we tried, and it was a lot of conversation. It was a lot of really painful honesty. We tried polyamory. We tried all kinds of things. We tried open marriage. Those things didn't work for us in that relationship. I didn't feel great doing them. And I know a lot of people who do, and that's great. But I wanted my own. I wanted my own partner. I wanted my own person that I could curl up into and felt like that was where my world was complete. I needed those things. So we did all those really deep, difficult conversations, but that ended up in divorce.
How did you get to what I love is that you not only made an effort to exist and have all you could in that one space, but then you came to the realization that you knew what you wanted and you needed to have it, and then you made that happen. Yeah. How did
Beth, let me reframe. So I think, knowing you the way I do, Beth, where you're taking us down a very specific path, and I don't know that you have the right people here to get the specific answer that you're looking for.
That maybe.
So let me frame the question a little bit and see if it maybe gets the conversation sparked again in a way that serves you too. Yeah. Is there, how have we all, what I want us to talk about is how we all specifically explored our sexuality in a safe way, specifically in the context of a relationship? So like, for example, if you want to, like, I'll start. When I was married, I wanted to start bringing sex toys into my sex life with my ex-husband, and that was not something he was comfortable with. So I had to talk to him about it, and I had to give him space and time to process. And over time, it got to the point where he understood that was something I wanted, and so we explored it. We went shopping together, right? So like, that's a pretty, elementary example. And Mom, I told you might need earmuffs. I'm sorry. So like, what are some ways that you guys have had, if you're comfortable sharing, and it doesn't have to be sex specifically, sexuality is so much more than just sex.
Totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like, I had a big part of me exploring my sexuality and getting comfortable in my pansexuality was getting comfortable with the fact that people often mistake me for a man. I have short hair. I often dress in a t-shirt and jeans. I'm fairly curvy and I think I'm pretty, but I get mistaken for a man. But that's part of my sexuality. Sometimes when I was like my last girlfriend, I would intentionally dress butch.
Sure.
But that's part of my sexuality. So like,
Sure.
how have you guys explored that safely in the context of a relationship?
Man,
Right.
Thanks, Sunny, because that did get to it. Thank you.
in my life experience, having married my daughter's mother when we were really young, we just explored it together. Since then, in newer relationships that since we're not together anymore, I have clear desires and stuff that I want. So I can't say that I've done that
Well, you
in
have
new
though. You've shared
relationships,
with me.
but I've been in situations where I've allowed someone else to do that.
Yeah.
Like, well, I know, I've dated younger women that still had.
Well, so you mentioned earlier that you've been in a relationship where one person was open and the other one wasn't. How did
Right.
you navigate getting to that place and getting to that agreement?
Oh man, well,
In a nutshell.
I
Precisely.
was like, listen, I still need to be a hoe. I'm not ready.
Who said that? You or your partner?
I'm not. I said there's an aspect of my sexuality that like no one woman can satisfy me right now, and it's not that our sex is bad. It's not that you're not valuable to me, but I can't be monogamous. I'm sorry. Like I don't even think I said I'm sorry. I said I can't. I just can't right now.
And so,
and she said, "Do whatever you need to do. Be safe about it, and don't ever let me feel like I'm second."
Nice.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I was like, done and done all day. Thank you. And I became more and more loyal to that person.
That's how that works often. Yeah. When you've been given freedom and flexibility,
but
you're rewarded. Yeah.
Right. But what had happened was there was a moment when where her curiosity got the best of her. And one day she asked me, like, how many women are you talking to right now? And yeah, please close that one.
It just got a little out of hand.
It got well, yes. But in that moment, do you really want to know the answer to that? Are you just curious? Do you want to have a conversation? Or do you want to know the answer? Because you're asking a specific question. It sounds like you want to talk about where we are, not exactly about what I'm doing. She specifically was like, I want to know how many women you're talking to. And that's when
that's dangerous.
The situation didn't change, but there's aspects of it that did from then forward. At the time, I was talking with 7 women. And I wasn't having sex with 7 women, but I was trying to.
But then her fear is that you'll get into an emotional intimacy with one of those 7 women.
Right. And then that I told her a few days later, because at that point, I tend to weed people out relatively quickly once I figure out, what they want from me, and I don't want to mislead anybody. So 3 or 4 days later, I was like, hey, that 7's down to 3. You don't have anything to worry about. And 3 was a more comfortable number than 7. So, yeah. So that's my experience with all of that. Part of I want to backtrack just for a second. You had a kind of 2-layered question on how you,
like, how do you safely explore sexuality inside of a relationship?
If it were just you and I talking and we were just talking about it, I'd just be like, you have to be fucking dirty, nasty, freaky, without boundaries. Like, the one thing that I can't stand with any sexual partner is, oh no, stop, oh that hurts. Like, why are we doing this then? Like, if everything we're doing bothers you, then have sex with someone more vanilla than myself. You know what I'm saying?
But you got to know that about yourself to be able to say that to somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I hear that a lot from men, though, that they really want the freaky woman. They want her. And
But we only want
I
it for a
want to
little.
be the freaky woman. So
Yeah, we only want it for a little bit because most of us want the freaky shit for a few months, and then we can't keep
Sorry,
up.
we're not listening to you right now.
Nobody admits it.
No, I'm not afraid of that shit. We'll have. I can have sex for a long time. I can have sex for a long time. Like I can have sex 4 hours for a few months, and then eventually it tapers off a little bit.
You need a breather.
because it's human nature. Yeah.
But again, okay, so hold on though. I want to come back to
Right,
it. Like,
sorry.
okay, so we're exploring sexuality. Here's the thing. I don't want to, like, you know, we're on the internet. Everybody can see us. And I don't want us to turn into like us talking dirty.
Right,
which Aaron will do. Aaron and I have very open, honest
When
conversations.
I got on this call, Aaron was using some big words.
Yes. Yes.
Wasn't?
Yeah. It's all good. No, you're good. So I want to throw the question back out. Like, how do you safely explore sexuality and like really expanding your sexuality with your partner?
Yeah. My answer is the same. I feel like you think I'm giving you a cop out, but we talk about it a lot. We talk about it all the time, sometimes in ways that are funny and sometimes in ways that are serious. Sometimes it's, I really need this from you. Sometimes this pushing and the strength and the sex is about emotional, mental connection. Sometimes it's about physical need. And it's just sort of always being open to talking about it. That is just always what it comes down to.
What else? What other elements in a relationship? Because we've all of us I know have been in a serious. I think all of us have been married. Have been in a serious relationship. What else besides sex enters into sexuality?
Yeah,
but people.
Good question.
Like I know that I've gone to like sex clubs with a partner to explore like, did we want to get kinky or not? And I know that there have been times where I ask like, what do you like to see me in? Does my ass look better in a skirt or jeans? Because I will wear whatever you like. I want you to like my body when I walk by you, right? So like what are other things that come up for you guys?
Dancing, music, like this is, to me is so, and what we do, like, meaning if I'm having an adventurous experience with a man, sex is going to be an adventurous experience. So let's, and I'm not saying I need to always go out because there's like sex, there's obviously you want to stay home and be cozy, but how you live your life with a partner is how you do sex with your partner.
That's great. I've never heard that.
I'm writing it down. Hold on, keep going.
Yeah. How you live your life with your partner is how you're going to have sex with your partner. Is that what you said?
Yes,
yeah, I love that.
For some adventure in your sex life, go do something adventurous. For sure that night or very soon after, your sex is going to get more adventurous.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for some cozy and snuggly kind of cuddly sex, then stay home, watch a movie. I mean, you see it happen, but if you just really realize what you want, you can actually create it.
Beth, that needs to go into your business copy.
It actually does, like immediately. It's fantastic.
Write it down, Beth. I can't remember what I even said, so I'm going to listen after.
Go back and listen because it was great. I love it.
How we did this.
So yeah, be adventurous in your relationship leads to having a more adventurous sex life.
Absolutely.
So how you date then, like what you choose to do with your partner is part of your sexuality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because also those living your life, you know, if you seek adventures, that's going to bring you closer.
Right.
Have like life experiences are going to bring you closer.
Sure.
Like traveling, going places, doing things, enjoying food, all that stuff.
Well, and sexuality, I think, is so tied into intimacy. So, for example, part of our sexuality in our relationship is
why?
What?
Oh,
what happened?
Comment.
Oh, yeah, whatever. I saw it. I ignored it. Wait.
Oh, they're gone.
They left.
Okay, we're on.
Oh, it's still us. Well, I think it's about intimacy. And so, it's really subconscious for me, but as I walk through the house on the day and I walk past Bernadette, I touch her shoulder, or I come up behind her and I lay my head on her back. Like that's all part of our sexuality and our intimacy and our constant way to connect and just remind you, I'm right here. I feel you. I'm busy. I'm working. You're working. The kids are busy and they need us, but I'm right here with you all the time.
It totally is. And it's all connect. It connects into how you have sex and and I'm almost wanting to say you can almost go without sex if you've got that. And I'm someone who can't go without sex, so I don't really mean that. What I mean is that feeds your sexual desires as well.
Totally does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. And well, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the more you want to do it. Or it's so easy to get. And even for us, sometimes you'll go 3 or 4 days a week and so fucking tired and shit just happens. And you're like, I don't really need it that bad. Then as soon as we do, I'm like, why didn't I need that bad? I totally needed it. Let's do it again right now. You know?
Yeah. Actually, that's interesting because there's that, like, there's like the busy life and then you kind of forget how great it is. And then it's awesome and exciting again. Yeah. In fact, I think it might have been Bernadette who was like making a post. We were talking one time and she's like, yeah, it's kind of great going away because I get to come back.
Absolutely.
And there's something beautiful about that too, the disconnect.
I tell her that all the time, that I am very, very grateful for the opportunity to miss her while she's gone. Because it reminds me that I love her and I want her home with me. And so I'm glad she leaves so that I can be excited that she comes back. Seriously, I love to miss her. It makes me feel great. And we feel wanted. Yeah. She knows that I want her to come home. Yeah. She knows that I miss her. Yeah.
You were saying, you said something else earlier I liked a lot around if you have conversation with gratitude. And it's almost like if you live with your partner in a grateful way, in an appreciative way. I was just talking to someone how I've transitioned. I was a wife for 12 years and I wasn't the greatest wife at all.
Neither was I.
I've learned a lot. And
welcome back.
And we kept talking about sex and intimacy.
Yeah. We just kept talking. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I was just referring, Bernadette had talked earlier around conversation with gratitude. And I was just saying, yeah, I've learned something. I was married for 12 years and I wasn't the greatest wife. And one way I existed was I was dissatisfied and I was demanding. And what I've learned is that I have to take ownership for my dissatisfaction and find out what it is I want. But the other part of it is I realized I had to transition. Okay, great. I know what I want. And I'm demanding, but what if I switch that? And so every man out there, be happy about this learning that I know what I want and I can be appreciative that I get to have it as opposed to be demanding that I have it, right? It's a totally different setup for me and a totally different setup for my partner. So that's something that I'm shifting through.
But yeah, I do think that you have to have conversation with gratitude. I am constantly put it in, not just with my partner, but in my life, with my friends, with my children, reminding them that I am grateful for the gifts that they give to me. I'm grateful for the gifts they give to the world and the things that they do. One of the things that you guys missed, Sunny and Aaron, we're talking about intimacy and sexuality. And I do this as part of my gratitude rituals throughout the day is the same, walking past and touching her gently as I walk past or laying a head on her back in the middle of busy days. We don't have time to do a lot, right? But it keeps that connection, which is sexuality and intimacy and communication. And it just with finding little bitty ways to sprinkle it throughout the day. Yeah. It keeps you connected in a way that you can't have otherwise.
You can be intimate without sex and you can have sex without intimacy. And for most people and what they define as a healthy relationship and somebody they want to be committed to, they're looking for both.
Yeah, I agree. And also somebody said to me once, and I loved this, I've taken this with me. It was probably a decade ago. In every relationship, there's a seeker and a sought. And every healthy relationships, you take turns. Because sometimes you need to seek and sometimes you need to be sought.
Yeah, David, again, David Deida in The Way of the Superior Man, the introduction, he talks about how for sex to really happen, there needs to be a certain amount of tension. And somebody has to be the ravager and somebody has to be the ravagee. And that it doesn't have to be the man ravaging the woman.
Of course.
Right? And or in same gender relationships too. But also the fact that in society, where David Deida gets a little controversial, in society, there's been a lot of feminist movement and women want to be equal. But if you're equal in all ways, including in the bed, the man and the woman become equal. There's no tension.
Right. So, but you can take turns.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. But in the moment, somebody's got to be willing to be sought, and
absolutely.
Somebody else has to be. You got to.
And I mean, I don't know. Imagine you guys go through. For me, sometimes I really feel like I want to be the aggressor, and sometimes I want to be pursued, and I want to be thrown around a little bit. I mean, whatever. Like, come up and surprise me. And sometimes I'm the one that does that. Like, guess what you're doing right now? Because I'm in charge.
Yeah, it flips. It flips, regardless, obviously, of gender, right? And I love that way. Sometimes there's a ravager, and sometimes I tried to grapple around this idea around men being raw, masculine men. But when you're actually speaking of it, and like Heather, in your case, right? It's not man or woman necessarily. It's being in your masculine and that raw, like, oh my God, I want to eat you up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was gonna
and then
say
the
that.
other
Feminine energy more than man, woman.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not sure. It is true. I don't know. I don't love. Can we come up with some? Can we make something up on the fly to replace masculine and feminine energy? Because I
appreciate that.
I feel like I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
that's why Sunny said the ravager and being ravaged. I like that. I like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So let's make that one what we say.
I don't think it does at all.
What'd you say?
I don't think masculine and feminine define.
But the words themselves are rooted in gender.
Yes, they are, which is why they kind of resonate
a little offensive for non-man.
Non-man. I mean, I'm not easily offended by anything, but yeah.
I really like David Dida's take on the ravager.
Yeah, very good.
There's a lot that David Dida says, and I'm like, I don't know about all that, but I like that description.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say that I like the ebb and flow of being pursuer and pursuee at different times.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find myself in situations where I'm expected to pursue.
Watching your face.
That gets boring. Yeah.
I am not a good card player. Can you tell? Can you not?
All right, so we've been at this for a while. We've actually been going for an hour and a half. Is there any? There's like so much that we can get to, right? Like, I'm going to do a separate talk on platonic touch. I'm going to do a separate talk on sex and God. We did one already on masculine and feminine energy. I know. There's so much, and we're doing another one on parenting, like intentional parenting, and I'm sure sex will come up in intentional parenting as well. But is there anything else around sexuality and labels that you guys really, really, really wish we had gotten to that we can touch on quickly before we wrap?
No, I think we hit good stuff.
Just
that it's all okay, right? Whatever it is that you want.
It's all okay.
It's all okay.
As long as you're being safe and respecting other people's space and respecting your own space, you should.
And don't make assumptions. Talk to the person that you want to be physically partnered with.
Yes.
Even if it's casual, right? Talk to them. Don't make assumptions about what they want or what they know or what they think you want. If you can't ask confidently, they may not be able to give it graciously.
I'm writing that one down too. What were you going to say, Erin? You had something up your sleeve.
I don't remember what I was going to say a moment ago, but she was saying about being communicative. I like that. I like being something that I try to do, and I'm not always the best at it. But I try to approach those types of conversations with the mentality of, like, even if I'm proposing something that I want, I try to approach the conversation with the desire to gain understanding.
I love that.
That's
intentional. It's very intentional.
Yeah, and it forces you to be a little bit more humble and bring humility to the table. And so even if I'm saying, there's something that's lacking that I want, I'm trying to figure out maybe what is it about my partner that is not allowing me to get what I want. And not in a manipulative way, but in a way that's like, where's her mentality at? Where maybe something that I'm doing is causing a reaction in her that makes her not want to be something. So it's
very self-reflective.
My conversation is coming from that place. Like, I'm trying to gain understanding. I've found that I tend to not have arguments anymore because of it. maybe in those conversations I might say something brash and feelings might get hurt, and then it might escalate. But it's not an argument. It's just like we're trying to figure something out together. Instead of saying, why isn't this happening? I want that, or those feel a lot more like ultimatums, and ultimatums are the death of relationships.
Oh my God, yeah. But I love your self-reflective approach, right? I mean, that's almost always the case, isn't it? Like, if somebody isn't able to give you something you need, there's a reason. Sometimes it's because you're not giving them something they need.
Right.
Right? I love that.
I would add the word curious to it. Like you said, trying to understand them. And I approach people in a similar way around trying to be curious. I mean, what's up with them? What's their story? What piece about them do you not know yet that is part of this? Right.
Because that'll uncover, like when you open up and then they open up and you're both open, like energetically, there's stuff happening. You know what I'm saying? And that's gonna draw out stuff maybe that you don't know or you're not super aware of about you also. I've been in super deep conversations where I've had to be like, hold on, like you just made me think of this thing that I thought I knew of myself that has to change right now because of this conversation.
Yeah, I love that.
And out of that, you're gonna have. Sorry.
And then think about what we were saying earlier. Imagine what that does to your intimacy then when you fucking have that moment and that person have that moment. And then you fucking fall in love with that person again, or they fall in love with you again because you're like, damn, because that's a vulnerable place to be, to be rediscovering or redefining something about yourself in that moment. And then that positive experience, hopefully will make you want to have those things again, and then the conversations can be something you look forward to,
like having intimate conversations about sex creates intimacy and will up level your awareness and connection sexually.
Well, having intimate conversations about intimacy has a positive effect on on your sex.
And vice versa.
And vice versa also. Yeah. Oh, sweet armpits.
Sorry. My computer was dying and I'm trying to get to the cord and
you're
fine.
I personally shave my armpits. Not everyone does that, but I do, and I'm glad right now. So
we have a question up on the board here.
Well, yeah, and before I get to that, I want to go back. You were saying when you have conversations, and like you have this thing happening between you energetically. I just want to, again, I'm going to send out an email with all the resources, but I wanted to drop the books, The Celestine Prophecy.
Yeah. Woo.
Is really awesome. And it's all it's more of a transformational type book, but that actually had a big impact for me on how I communicate in relationships and on my relationship to myself and my sexuality. There's a specific, I think it's the third insight, but there's a specific chapter in the book where he goes into his view on how people relate and how their energy interacts with each other. That just really gave me words to describe what I wanted for myself in my relationships.
It's also the way they described it in the book is very visual.
Yeah.
And since I've read that book, which was so long ago, I have it in my van. I always have it on me. I never
just in case.
But the visual that it creates, it's something you can totally keep with you all the time.
Yeah.
And letting the visualization of that process, what it is essentially is like.
Well,
there's people here that you might not have to read the whole damn book just to get that one paragraph out. But it's just about power control and if you're trying to dominate, then all your energy is stifling them, and you're not letting the energy meet in the middle and converge here. You're just and then that person's and it doesn't have to be that. It can just be like this in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And that's the gist of it. There's so much more to it than that.
I just had the experience of something I already knew, but I couldn't articulate.
Right.
So it was really awesome that somebody articulated. And even though the book is really focused on on woo-woo stuff, it's all about energy and how you interact with the world. There are several sections that really do impact sexuality, intimacy, and how you communicate in relationships. So I would just recommend that as a good read. Apparently Aaron has, you can borrow it from him.
It's the van.
We had a question from
A little creepy.
how about people that are not sexual? And that gets into, we were talking about labels earlier in our conversation about there's people who identify as asexual, who just, sex is not important to them. And there's people who just never want to have sex. I don't think that means you're not a sexual person. You still have sexuality to you. You just choose not to express it through physical intimacy.
Right.
And I think just it's an open question. It's hard to know exactly what. Maybe Noah, you want to expand a bit, but there are people who are so shut down that they don't have any desire for sex, and then if they're opened up, then
there's a big difference between what. Right. Yeah, some people just are like totally in touch with their sexuality and they're cool and they just don't feel a need to have sex with anybody and they don't want that part of themselves activated. And then there's people who there's something they're dealing with.
Or not dealing with, don't even know it, right? There are people who I work with who don't like sex at all, but there's clearly something underneath it because it's a negative experience towards it as opposed to like, so there's no sexual response. And then I've also worked with people who they had an awakening and for many years they thought they didn't want sex and they were fine without it. Like women, I don't know, men, Aaron or anyone else on there speak to whether men do this, but I know for me and other women that I've spoken with, we can kind of be a little dormant and be okay. I think actually, Heather, you were even speaking about it, like, you go a few days. I did for me.
Be dormant and be okay. That is not okay with me. My partners can attest. Dormancy does not work for me.
But I think, no, I know where you're going with this. And you do, sometimes you can convince yourself that that's just what happens. You get married and then life gets in the way. And in fact, I know I don't want to speak for her when she's not here, but for my girlfriend and in her previous relationship, she felt like, that's just what happens. So all the rest of this is good. I'm not going to worry about it, except that when you look deeper, all the rest of it probably isn't great if that part's not great because there's deeper issues.
Yeah, there's a big difference between somebody who identifies as asexual and has done the work to identify that they don't like sex versus somebody who's been in a very sexual relationship and then it tapers off.
And that's where I wanted to go to it is have you, not to you guys, but to the person asking the question, have you done the work to figure out what is?
If I know Noah, he's just trying to stimulate conversation. He doesn't have a specific situation.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Bring on the questions.
Yeah, Noah's good for that. I love Noah for that. Noah's my neighbor. Hi, Noah.
Cool.
Hello. Hi, Noah.
And
Noah's just been sitting around every night checking out your taboo talks. Is that what's happening?
He joins every week. He's a faithful viewer. I love it.
I love it.
He had a follow-up question on the range from sexual to not really. Is there an average? And I think just based on the fact that we all showed up to talk about sex, we're probably not a good group to poll to find out what.
I think I can give like a book answer to that, and it's high in the beginning and lower later.
So wait,
but not always. No, but I think we'll come back and
let's fight now. I've been waiting for the
Hold on, I'm saying he asked, "Is there an average?"
Are you talking about in a relationship?
Hold on. I'm just saying he asked, "Is there an average?"
He's up in the camera.
That's all. Because it says, "Is there an average?" So I'm just talking about the average. I think usually in a relationship when it comes to
meant like in life. You don't know what he meant.
Very sexual.
Noah, could you just tell us what you meant, please?
Yeah, come on, Noah.
In general or in a relationship?
Yeah, Noah, did you mean like overall in a human or like in the life cycle of a relationship? Let us know what you meant by that.
And the answer is different for everyone.
Yeah.
Like I don't think.
Hold on, but an average is like the mean between the extreme
for each person.
Right, that's true.
Right. So I'm not blanket answering for the
he's
world.
looking in general for meeting sex every day or like once a month.
87%. We are making this up right now as we go. So you're right about that.
So for me, at first I want to have sex every day, and then eventually I have other stuff to do too.
But not always.
I've been postponing while we've been having sex. I still got to get back to those things.
See, for me, where I'm at in the relationship, it's a me thing. It's not about my partner. It's about me and what my body.
Well, and then there's orgasms versus actually having sex versus actually connecting. Like you may need to have orgasms 10 times a day, no matter what's happening in your intimate relationships. Who knows? But sometimes I can go 3 or 4 days and I don't feel a crazy urge, and then I might hit a day where I'm like, no, 5 times today. Like, I can't get enough. It has to keep happening. I just don't think.
So you need an average of.
I know, right? My average.
I know as a monster. Yes. I think too, though. I think it's the same for women. For men, based on my experience in relationships with men. But I think that some of it is hormonal and cyclical.
Absolutely.
But I think men have more of like a 3-month cycle than a monthly cycle. But I think that there's cyclical times where people, like, their biology requires more physical stimulation or more energetic stimulation.
Right. Well, I know in the beginning of relationships, we have more testosterone in our bodies because new relationship energy tends to do that. And that's the reason that's not untrue.
For women, though, Sunny is totally right. Cycle-wise, I had a friend who recently, her wife was out of town, and she said, that time of the month where your body is begging you to get pregnant, which she's ovulating, right, even though she's married to a woman. She was like, I'm all alone, and this is a terrible time of month to be all alone. Your body is like, no, get pregnant. Yes. Because you're craving sex. Yeah. Your body wants an orgasm desperately. Yeah. And it happens every month.
I have times too where I'm craving touch. Like, it's more about I just want to be, like, it doesn't have to be sexual. I just want to be loved on. Like, I will straight up call friends and be like, I need a hug.
Yeah,
just cool.
I did it the other night. I went into the kitchen. She's cooking. And I said, can you put that down? And she's like, yeah, what's the matter? And I said, just hold me for a second. And I didn't want to be kissed. I didn't want anything. I just, like, and then she put her arms around me and I said, no, tighter. Just hold me tighter. Yeah. And we just stood there for 2 or 3 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm good. Yep. I can move on.
I'm so excited to do talk on platonic touch because I feel like there's so.
Can I? I want to go. I want to do it.
Yes.
I want to do all your blogs with you, Sunny. I love
it. Yeah. You have the guest link. Sign up for as many as you want. And on that note, guys, I'm actually going to wrap it up because we've been going for a really long time. So to everybody who's watching, this is Taboo Talk. I do this weekly. I do it live at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's a different subject every week, different guests for the most part every week, although I do have repeats like Heather's going to be. And we just pick a topic that's kind of taboo and we talk about it blatantly and boldly and without shame, and we just dive in. And so next week we're going to do race. The week after that, we're doing spirituality versus religion. So would love to have you guys join me. If you go to tabootalk.us, you can see a list of all the topics, get links to join. If you plug your email address in, I will send you an email with a link to the blog that will have all of the resources that we talked about, the books, links, articles, and I'll remind you of upcoming blabs. I won't try to sell you anything, and you can remove yourself if you decide you don't want it anymore. So go to tabootalk.us. Follow me on Twitter. I'm the host at Sunny Sarah. And all these guys, they'll be in the links too. So
very cool.
Had a good time. Thank you so guys.
I'm sorry I was late, but this was awesome. Thank you guys.
I love being able to say like penis and sex and all that stuff, like live in front of people. It just makes me happy. So thanks for playing.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.